The previous two chapters that we find here in John chapter 8 and 9, which is where we were last week, and where Jesus said, I am the light of the world. And he goes on and he proves without a shadow of a doubt that he truly is the light that brings the light into darkness. And he gives the ultimate by way of a physical manifestation of that as he takes this man that has been born blind in chapter 9 and he gives him sight, something that had never happened before. And he says, I am the light of the world. Unfortunately, not everybody was impressed. There were some Pharisees that didn't like this at all. And they felt like him saying that he's the light of the world, that couldn't be, that they are actually the enlightened ones. In fact, if you look in the text in chapter 9, verse 16, they say, look, this man is not from God. He doesn't keep the Sabbath, talking about him, which had nothing to do with the law, the Torah. It never had anything to do with this. They go on down in verse 28, and they're ridiculing the man who had been healed. And they said, you're that man's disciple. We're Moses' disciples. They said, we know that God spoke to Moses. We don't know where this guy came from. And then go down to verse 34, and they say to the blind man once again, are you trying to teach us? Are you serious? We're the enlightened ones. We ever do that? We ever tempted to think we are the enlightened ones? That there's not anything else that I can learn. That I've got it all figured out. I know who God is. And we stop learning. That's a sermon all within itself. That was not in the PowerPoints. But it's such arrogance that we see here. And so suddenly Jesus changes the metaphor. He goes to another I am statement. And this one that he gives, really it says less about it of all the I am statements. And the New Testament writers really don't build off of that metaphor. So it's a little bit harder to grab onto. But we know that it's there. We know that it's important, and that's exactly what we're going to study. Sheep are very important in that day and time. And it was important for milk. It was important for wool that they made their clothes. It was important for meat. And the type of sheep that was there that I wish you could see the picture this morning. I'll put it in the book. Is they're called fat-tailed sheep. And I'm not even going to describe it to you. You just got to see it. Which, by the way, has nothing to do with the sermon. It's just a neat little thing. But there's actually two I am statements, two metaphors that are going to come out of John chapter 10. And one of those is, he says he is the sheep gate. And the other one, he says, I am the good shepherd. And it's this first one that we're going to look at this morning. In fact, in your outline, the very first thing I want to notice is the door of the sheep is Jesus. The door of the sheep is Jesus. Now let's go to our text in John chapter 10. We start in verse 2. The one who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. The doorkeeper opens it for him, and the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought all his own inside, he goes ahead of them. Outside, he goes ahead of them. The sheep follow him because they recognize his voice. They will never follow a stranger. Instead, they will run away from him because they don't recognize the voice of strangers. Jesus gives them this illustration, but they did not understand what he was telling them. So Jesus said again, I assure you, here it is, I am the door of the sheep. Verse 9, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved, and will come in and go out and find pasture. You go back to the sheepfold, and the sheepfold is this thing, and they had the ones that were out in the countryside. They were just rocks, and they would pile these rocks, and it would be a big circle, and then there would be an opening. But there was no gate. There was no door to the opening out in these fields. So what would happen is the shepherd would lay across that door at night. He literally became a door. He became the gate to the sheep pen. And what Jesus is saying here in our text, he's saying, I am the door. I'm the gate of the sheep pen. And we hear that and we're like, well, I don't have sheep. I don't understand this whole analogy. What does that mean to me? Well, first of all, I think it's very important we see in the text. He doesn't say that he is a door. He says, I am the door. And that sounds kind of arrogant. It sounds to some as if, this is being offensive. But folks, this is not a power struggle that we're finding here with the metaphor. This is why metaphors are so powerful. Because you follow them along. And we see that the metaphor is not, he doesn't give of a great king. He doesn't say, I'm the king. I am the king. He doesn't say, I am the general. I'm a conqueror. What he says is, I am the door of the sheep pen. And why else would we go any other way than to the only begotten Son of God? The one who left the heavens and came down to be with his creation. To be crucified by his creation. To be rejected by his own people. He died the death that we deserved. And it's really interesting, and we're going to really develop this next week, but basically, usually sheep are the ones that were used for worship. It was the one used in times of forgiveness. But here it's not the sheep, it's the shepherd who gives his life for the sheep. Jesus is the way. I used to love The Price is Right when I was a kid. Now, I know I picked on young people today, but young people, it was Bob Barker, not this blonde-headed guy you see. Bob Barker. And what I always loved is that there were these doors. And it'd be like, okay, behind door number 1, do you want, and it might be this exotic vacation, or do you want what's behind door number 2, a new car, right? And so you have these choices of what door, and out here in society, out here in our world, it tells us there's all kinds of doors. And they make them sound nice. They pretty them up. They make you think that this is the one that you probably will want. But folks, listen, when it comes to salvation, there is only one door. And it is Jesus. It's the shepherd. In Acts 4 verse 12, Jesus said, there it is said, there is salvation in no one else. For there is no other name under heaven given to people by which we must be saved. And I want you to understand a little bit about this and the sense in which it's Peter that's speaking there in Acts 4. And Peter is talking to Jews. He is talking to leaders of the Jews. These are people of covenant. A covenant promise that had given thousands of years before. And they were given a name, they were given a land, they were given a seed. But even though thousands of years, just by being born into this group of people, they were given these promises, this covenant by God, it could not save them individually. And my point is that if this is being stated to these people who are in covenant with God, how much more for us who are not among the Jewish people? And yet, it is for all. Galatians 3:28. It's for all nations. It is for all nationalities. It is for all people who have come and they've sinned in a variety of ways. It is for all genders. It doesn't matter. He says, it's for all. I want to shepherd the world. I want to lead you through the door to the Father. But even so, Jesus is that safe place to bring the sheep. He brings us into the pen. He becomes the door for protection. Isaiah chapter 40 was really a comforting passage to the Jews back in times of exile. Despite their sins that brought them to this place, the prophet assures them, you've suffered enough. And even though all these terrible things that you've done, God is still going to save you. God had left the land of Israel. It's so amazing. God has to send them into captivity, into this judgment, because they were worshiping other gods. They were defiling his name in so many ways. And yet, even though he has to send them there, he goes with them. He leaves Jerusalem. And the God of Israel goes with them into captivity. And now what Isaiah 40 says is that he's going to bring you back. But also know this, that the God of Israel, Yahweh, the one that you know by name, he says he's coming back. He's coming back to Jerusalem to be your God. And the way it is described, and it's so interesting because normally when a messenger would be sent into a city, it was usually to tell them that the enemy is coming. Here we see that the prophet is sent in, a messenger is sent in to the city to say that God is coming. And listen to this description in Isaiah 40, verse 11. He protects his flock like a shepherd. He gathers the lamb in his arms and carries them in the fold of his garment. He gently leads those that are nursing. It is a means of protection. Normally, a hired shepherd would be the one to sleep in the pen at night, because the other would be up and caring for them and watching over them throughout the day, but not the tireless shepherd. Not the one who's there to protect us day and night. But here's what's really cool if you go back to verse 9, is he doesn't just lock us up in the pen. It says that he also opens the door so that he may lead us out to nourishment and refreshment. Folks, Jesus as our shepherd, he's not wanting us to find ourselves in some kind of isolated community within ourselves. And we need this kind of worship together and communion together, and other times, not just on Sunday, other times we share together. But he did not intend for us just to live within ourselves. He intended us to go out. And he intends us to continue to be guided. He continues to nourish us and to refresh us. And for us to continue to follow him as he leads us into the green pastures and beside the still waters. I want to show one more thing in your outline. It's this: the thieves and robbers are false teachers. The thieves and the robbers in the text, they're false teachers. In fact, verse 1, he opens up this way. He says, I assure you, anyone who doesn't enter the sheep pen by the door, but climbs in some other way, is a thief and a robber. Go down to verse 8. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. And then verse 10, a thief comes only to steal and to kill and to destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it in abundance. And it seems kind of strange, really, because chapters 8 and 9 flow into chapter 10. In other words, it's not like this is a whole nother setting. And if you remember what happened in chapter 9, this is, as we said a moment ago, this man is given sight. And he goes back and he tells the leaders among the Jews, and they reject it. They will not listen. And they kick him out of the synagogue. They were kicking people out of the synagogue who professed the name of the Messiah, who believed in him and trusted in him. But they could not shake this man. He knows that he now has seen light where he had lived in darkness. And Jesus comes back to him, and there's some Pharisees that are nearby. And Jesus has said, because you've seen, you're blind. You may remember us talking about some of this last week. And it's like they were just not getting it. So we flow into chapter 10, and he starts us up about this shepherd and the pen and all of this kind of stuff and these thieves. Because you see, the leaders of Israel were always known in the Hebrew Bible as shepherds. And he says, you've done a miserable job. When you look at these shepherds out here and you compare it to the good shepherd, these shepherds of Israel are leading you away from the Messiah rather than leading you to the Messiah. Jesus is contrasting himself. They were leading God's people away from Christ. They are false shepherds. They are thieves. And despite his miracles, these false shepherds of Israel, they passionately rejected Jesus' message and declaration to be the Son of God. And they show that they are not concerned for the spiritual welfare of Israel. The only thing these people are concerned about is how the sheep can serve them. Turn in your Bibles to 1 John. We're finishing John 10. 1 John chapter 4. John tells us something about identifying true and false shepherds. He says, dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to determine if they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. This is how you know the Spirit of God. Okay, here it is. Every spirit who confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God. But every spirit who does not confess Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist. You have heard that he is coming, and he is already in the world now. You are from God, little children, and you are conquered them, because the one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world. They are from the world. Therefore, what they say is from the world. And the world listens to them. We are from God. Anyone who knows God listens to us. Anyone who is not from God does not listen to us. For this we know, the spirit of truth and the spirit of deception. Listen, here's the bottom line. If one tells you that Jesus is not the way, they are false. If they tell you that Jesus was a good man, but he was not the beloved Son of God, they are false. If someone tells you you can find salvation and redemption through any other means than Jesus Christ, they are false. And they may have the greatest of intentions. They may be very sincere in heart. But there is only one, the Good Shepherd, who came and he gave his life for the sheep. And he calls to all of us. And if we are his, we come. We do not answer to another shepherd, is what it says back in John 10. We only answer to the Messiah, the Son of God, the Good Shepherd, who laid down his life for the sheep. And here's the beautiful thing, is that he leads us. He doesn't just leave us to our home. He continues to lead us and to guide us. But we must listen to his voice. And stop all the worldly distractions and the voices that are about us. Maybe you're here and you need prayers. You feel like a lost sheep. And you're ready to find Jesus. Listen, it's not about me. But I, as a servant of Christ, will pray for you, and I will tell you more and more about Jesus. Because that is where hope is. That's where our protection is found. That is where we are guided and loved and cared for in ways. So if you're subject to the invitation in any way, I encourage you to come now. As together we stand and as we sing.